Hi, this is the new Caribou, Sir David, the Bard. You know, I've been doing a series, and will continue to do a series of articles as they come up, and they come up all the time in Utah, on child molestation and sexual crimes and sexual sins. The Mormon Utah is basically #1 in the world for erections that will grab anybody or anything, any age. I wanted to give you an experience that I had yesterday. Now, a lot of Mormon leaders always talk about other people's stories because they have no stories, and there's boring stories. My mom is in a rest home, and she took her house and put it up for sale and all that, and my sister kindly went over and started to clean her house out. Well, my mom promised me a nice leather chair that she just bought. So I went over there, and there was no chair. Those Mormons. The chair was translated. It's up with Moses and Jesus. Pele the ale. So I try to have higher standards than Mormons, and most of the time I do. And my sister told my mother yesterday that she was flying out of town, and she was back in Oklahoma, where a belt buckle is a second form of ID. And if you have teeth, they know you're a tourist. He says, I hate that state. And when you go to the county fair, which I did, I'm not telling Monson stories here, they said, well, do you like French fries? And I go, yeah, I like French fries. Look at me. I'm a living French fry with a head and 2 arms on it. They said, well, you'll like calf fries. And I said, okay, give me some calf fries. So we lined up at the little booth, and I'm standing there with 20 other people in line. I thought, hey, these calf fries might be a really nice, new, good thing. And just 2 or 3 people before I got up there to be served, I turned to one of the guys behind me and I said, well, you know, what is a calf fry? He goes, you ever heard of testicles? I have. Have you ever heard of cow testicles? Yeah, I guess. You're about to have some of those fried. Jesus. Oklahoma. I said, homie, don't play that. I said, I'm out of here. And I left the line, and they go, man, he's a stranger. You know, he was almost up there to get served, and stupid guy just left. Well, I've never let a testicle cross these lips, and I hope I die before they ever do. Well, getting back to my sister. She was supposed to be gone. And I loaded a few things in the car that my mom gave me, and then I looked over, and here's a lady walking, and I hadn't seen her in 10 years, but I could recognize her attitude from across the sidewalk. And I said, Mom said there was a chair over here for me. She says, everything is gone. So there's no chair. No, there's no chair. I hadn't talked to her in 10 years, and that's the way she treated me. And so I got in the car and I drove away. Now here's the moral. This story has no moral, but here's the immoral story. I've done a lot of series here on the Mormon Church hiding child molestation. They insist that they don't. Now, I'm almost 65, and when I was, I guess, around 35, maybe 38, I found out, no, I was younger, I was 28, I found out that my father, the Sunday school superintendent, if you're old enough to remember that word in the Mormon Church, he was the Sunday school superintendent. He got up and introduced everybody and welcomed them to Sunday school every Sunday. Well, he had been molesting my sister for more than 2 years in the house I grew up in, and I was off at BYU, so I hadn't heard about this atrocious incident. And so I went to my mother, and she said she never heard anything about it. And my sister, Debbie, I guess climbed out the window one day or one night and ran over to her girlfriend's house and told her. And then I guess it went through the entire community. Well, my dad was not quite yet a high priest. He taught the gospel doctrine class for years in the Ojai ward, and he wasn't looked up to as a real official or a real authority or a real intellectual guy. Jesus. He wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. But be that as it may, he was active in the church. We had to pay our tithing. He whipped us the family home evening. I'd rather face a whip than family home evening. What a stupid meeting. I don't want to go. Still don't want to go. Well, he had molested her. Now, and again, I just go back to a trust in the Mormon church. You would think that the Mormon church would back her up and would confront him and obey the law. Now, I have to admit, the law 30 years ago wasn't as strong. It was still the same law, but it wasn't enforced. And this was in California. Now, here's what happened. My own eyes, oh, those aren't my eyes, they could be. My own ears. Me and my mother, or my mother and I, took my sister, Debbie, over to the Ojai ward house. And we sat down with our bishop, and he had there the stake president of the Santa Barbara, it might have been the Ventura stake, I think it was Ventura stake then. And they were sitting in two chairs, and the three of us, me and my mom and sister, sat there. And I was the voice because I was the most educated, and I was the most verbal. And anyway, I said to them, listen, my father has been molesting my sister for the last 2 years. He's been masturbating on her, and he's been showing his penis, and he may have been asking her to put his weenie in her mouth, and she's been 10, 11 years old. And the bishop jumped up and says, well, he's doing better than Joseph Smith. He had a 14-year-old. I said, sit down, Bishop, sit down. So these two went into a quasi-fake shock. I'm telling you what I saw with my own eyes, folks. I'm not telling a story that his uncle said that his mother knew somebody who went to Utah. I'm not doing that. I'm telling you with my own eyes and ears what happened. So the stake president, he does the Pele Ale. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. How often did they do it? Stop that question. And my bishop is, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I wonder if it was good for him. So anyway, we reported it, and they both promised to get a hold of my dad's bishop. My dad was and still is in Topeka, Kansas. And they said, we're going to do something about this. We're going to do something about this. The Mormons. Anyway, we left, and we thought, well, that we have their promise that they're going to do something. So I was in my sister's house one day, and the bishop of the Topeka, Kansas ward called my sister, and she handed the phone to me and said, talk to my older brother. I was the oldest of 5 children. And I said, Bishop, I said, you know, we reported this, and there needs to be something done. And he says, well, your father has repented. My sister, her life is destroyed. And this clown, homie, says, he's repented. Well, I said, did he cut his weenie and balls off? No. Well, he hasn't repented that much now, has he? So anyway, he says he's repented. He said that he's been to his bishop and that this situation has been taken care of. And I said, well, he hasn't been to my sister, and the situation is not taken care of. Well, he got mean and gruff, and I hung up. Well, I'm kind of a follow-up person, and so I looked up all the bishops of the Ojai ward. Now, we had been there as a family before the ward was built, so I knew Bishop Riemann, Bishop Barnes. I knew, you know, 3 or 4 of the more later ones, and Bill Jackson. I knew all these guys, and Killian, what's his first name? I can't remember. So I got on the phone, and I called all over the United States and all over the world, and I talked to every damn bishop of the Mormon ward in Ojai, California. You can't get one Mormon to tell you one truth, including my dad, including my bishops and my other bishops throughout Topeka, Kansas. So when I talked to them, most of them said, if I had known about this, he would have been excommunicated. Well, not one of the bishops said he'd ever been to any of the bishops. Well, the church swept it under the carpet, and this is another one of those weenie out-of-the-pants stories that the Mormon church didn't follow up on. Well, I tried to forgive my dad, and to this day, I still think my dad is a wonderful person. He certainly has one character flaw. Child molestation should not be a strength on your resume. So, anyway, I tried to forgive the guy, and he was living over in Colorado. I think in the Aurora area, where they just had that movie shooting tragedy over there. And he had married a pretty sweet little 450-pound woman. And back in those days, I was 180 pounds, so she was 3 times the man I was. And she had a 10-year-old daughter, Dee Dee. And they invited me to stay overnight, and I wanted to visit my dad, and he and I went camping in a Volkswagen bus. And if you've never ridden in a Volkswagen bus, you're a very lucky person. God. The Germans did get back at us with the Beetle and the Volkswagen bus. Anyway, we were laying in the bus at night, about ready to go to sleep. It folds down into a bed. And somehow we got on the subject of my sister being molested by him. And he said, well, I've repented of that, and I feel really bad that I did it. And I have the rest of my life to prove, you know, that I'm a decent human being. Well, you know me. I'm naive. I am totally naive. And so I said, gee, Dad, I'm glad that you're feeling that way, and I certainly feel better about it, and let's go on with a family and a good life. 2 days later, I'm still at his house, and I come in the front door. He's, I guess, at work, and here's the 450-pound woman. Now that's with no clothes, but I can't verify that because I didn't want to verify that. And she's sitting on the end of her couch, and the poor girl is just crying her eyes out. Well, I sat down, and her name is Diana. So I sat down by Diana, and I said, what the hell? Why are you crying? And she says, well, I think your dad is going to get excommunicated from the church. And she began to get hysterical. I said, well, you know, what did he do? He said, well, he was teaching. See, these Mormon men are always teaching young girls. They're always teaching young girls. And when they say, well, do you know where your clitoris is? And 12-year-olds, no. Well, let me show you. That's the Mormon way. God damn. Anyway, Diana said, your dad was teaching early morning seminary to Dee Dee. Now, early morning seminary does exist in the Mormon church, but you go to the church building, and there's a teacher there that's paid to teach the young kids before school starts. Well, my dad, Jesus, what a guy, what a Mormon. He decided to start his own seminary program with one 10-year-old, 11-year-old girl, same age as my sister was. And Diana said, well, when I walked in the bathroom, they were both masturbating each other. And I said, well, that's one of the highest crimes of the Mormon church, masturbation. And she goes, with each other? I said, that's worse. That's worse. Jesus. So I told Diana, I sat down with her on the couch, and I said, you know, I want to be loyal to my family and my father. but I think that these young people need to be protected from people like my father. And she said, what do you mean? And I gave a lot of thought to it. This was one of the hardest decisions I ever made, to rat out my father. But I did. And I said, Diana, he did this to my sister too. It was Sunday school lessons. You got seminary here. So she was pissed. She just was so mad at him. Well, I came back the next day and he started screaming and yelling at me and slamming the door. He wouldn't let me in the house. And I said, well, you know, Dad, you've done this before. And he says, no, I haven't. And I said, what? No, you haven't? He says, I'm not going to get excommunicated. And he didn't, because he told the Mormon bishop in Colorado that he'd never done it before. He lied. And the bishop, I guess, let him go. And I said to him, how can you do that? You're a member of the church, and you're promised to be honest and not lie, and you're not doing either one. He said, well, he said, the Lord says when you repent, he remembers the sin no more. So the first one never happened. That is Mormon doctrine, folks. That's Mormon logic, Mormon spin, and Mormon doctrine. Because he told his bishop and he was sorry, the sin is remembered no more by the church or by the Lord. So Dee Dee was the first time he molested, and he got away with it twice in the Mormon church without any kind of retribution or a punishment at all. So don't tell me that these stories that I bring to you are made up. Don't tell me the Mormon church doesn't push things under the carpet, and don't tell me. It happened, folks, in my family with my sister, and it has ruined her whole life. I really think that she's obnoxious to me because maybe I look like my father. I'm an oldest son, and she just has so many triggers that she can't stand me or my father, and that's sad. So I have to have some respect for that damage that he did. So thank you for the Mormon church. They split our family up finally. They let my sister be molested for 2 years. Dee Dee got molested for 1 year. And no report, no court, nothing. Welcome to the justice and the religious sanctions and policies and procedures of the Mormon church on molestation. Thanks.